Okay, so starting back up where we left off in the first part, we're talking about the maximum security workplace potentially becoming the maximum security society. As this caption states, more and more organizations, more and more companies are actually looking at and following their employees or prospective employees on social media to determine whether or not they would be suitable for their organization. While some people continue to fight it, there really hasn't been much determination made about whether or not using social media is legal or appropriate in the hiring process or in determining if someone should lose their job. There has been several cases where this has happened, and I assume it'll continue to happen until a determination is made. So be wary, be careful what you post and what's actually visible. Make sure if you want to post whatever you want to post, make it private so that it can't be searchable. Okay? So group dynamics, we're going to focus on effects of group size, on stability and intimacy, effects of group size on attitudes and behavior, leadership, the power of peer pressure, and the Ash experiment. So to better understand how different groups work, sociologists study group dynamics, or the ways in which individuals affect groups, and the ways in which groups influence individuals. So the study of group dynamics focuses on group size, leadership, conformity, and decision making. Sociologists recognize a small group as one that is small enough for everyone in it to interact directly with all the other members. So George Simel was one of the first sociologists to extensively study group size and the relationships between group members. As Simel noted, the size of the group is significant for its dynamics. So a dyad is a social group containing two members. It is the smallest and most fragile of all human groups. Marriages and love affairs are examples. If one member loses interest, the dyad is done. A triad is a group of three persons. A married couple with a first child, for example, would be considered a triad. Triads basically are stronger than dyads, but are still extremely unstable. It is not uncommon for coalitions to form in which there is alignment of some members of the group against another. Often one member becomes an arbitrator or mediator because he or she always tries to settle disagreements between the other two members of that group. So as the members are added to a group, intensity decreases while stability increases. For there are more linkages between more people within the group. The groups develop a more formal structure to accomplish their goals. For instance, by having a president, a treasurer, and so on. This structure enables groups to survive over time. And this diagram shows you the different sizes of groups and how it kind of affects, and the effects that it could have, and the multitude of relationships that can be had within each group. Research by Darley and Lantané found that as groups grow larger, they tend to break into smaller groups. So people are less willing to take individual responsibility, so there's a diffusion of responsibility, and they interact more formally toward one another. We're looking at leadership now. So we're going to look at different types of leaders. There's instrumental, there's expressive, there's different leadership styles, authoritarian, democratic, laissez-faire. So a leader may be defined as someone who influences the behaviors of others. So the two types of group leaders, instrumental, which are task-oriented leaders, try to keep the group moving towards its goal, reminding the members of what they are trying to accomplish, while expressive, socio-emotional leaders are less likely to be recognized as leaders but help with the group's morale. These leaders may have to minimize the friction that instrumental leaders necessarily create. There are three types of leadership styles. There's authoritarian leaders that give orders and frequently do not explain why they praise or condemn a person's work. You have democratic leaders We try to gain a consensus by explaining proposed actions, suggesting alternative approaches, and giving facts as the basis for their evaluation of the members' work. And then you have laissez-faire. Members are very passive and give the group almost total freedom to do as they wish. The psychologists Ronald Lippitt and Ralph White discovered that the leadership styles produced different results when used on small groups of young boys. Under authoritarian leaders, the boys became either aggressive or apathetic. Under democratic leaders, they were more personal and friendly. And under laissez-faire leaders, they asked more questions, made fewer decisions, and were notable for their lack of achievement. So different situations require different leadership styles. Sociologists would disagree that people are born to be leaders. Rather, they find that people with certain characteristics are more likely to become leaders. Those who represent the group's values are seen as capable of leading the group out of crisis, are more talkative, express determination and self-confidence, are taller, or are judged better looking. So they're the ones that tend to be more likely to become leaders. And not all those characteristics are good things that develop good leaders. And in talking about leaders, there has been a focus on different kinds of leadership and who makes good leaders and what makes a good leader. So one of my recommendations for you would be to look at the article titled Level 5 Leaders. It is a great article that kind of explains the difference between each level 1 through 5 of leaders and kind of telling you, what makes a good leader from that standpoint and how you can get there. So those images that we just passed were focusing kind of on peer influence and what can contribute to kind of group decision making. So we're looking at the power of peer pressure and conformity. And conformity is pretty much going along with your peers. So groups have a significant degree of influence over people's attitudes and actions. A study by Dr. Solomon Ash indicates that people are strongly influenced by peer pressure and have a need to belong. Ash was interested in seeing whether individuals would resist the temptation to change a correct response to an incorrect response because of peer pressure. So Ash would hold cards up in front of small groups of people and ask which set of cards matched. One at a time, they were supposed to respond aloud. All but one of the group members was a Confederate, having been told in advance by the researcher how to answer the question. So after 2 trials in which everyone answered correctly, the Confederates intentionally answered incorrectly, as they were previously instructed to do. So of the 50 people tested, 33% ended up giving the incorrect answers at least half the time, even though they knew the answers were wrong. Only 25% always gave the right answer despite peer pressure. Dr. Stanley Milgram sought to determine why otherwise good people apparently participated in the Nazi slaughter of Jews and others. Milgram's experiment showed how difficult it is for individuals to challenge people in positions of authority. So he conducted experiments in which one person, supposed to be the teacher, was instructed to administer an electric shock to the other person, or the learner, for each wrong answer given to certain questions and to increase the voltage of the shock after each answer. So in fact, the learner was playing a role. That person really wasn't being shocked. And they were told to intentionally give wrong answers, but only pretending to be electrocuted. Since a person in apparent authority, so a scientist, someone wearing a white coat, or someone from the university laboratory, continually stated that the experiment had to continue, even though the learner was crying out in pain, most of the teachers
gave in to that authority and continued to administer the shock even when they appeared to produce extreme pain. So the scientific community was disturbed not only by Milgram's findings, but also by his methods. Association of social researchers accordingly adopted codes of ethics to require that subjects be informed of the nature and purpose of social research, and almost all deception was banned. So this is an image of the experiment that would take place, and you would see the person kind of, expressing pain while the individual sitting to his left is continuing to increase the pain as he gives incorrect answers. So even today, people continue to obey the experimenter at about the same rate as they did in the 60s, and they do continue to do this experiment as of currently. So sociologist Irving Janis coined the word groupthink to refer to situations in which a group of people think alike and any suggestion of alternatives becomes a sign of disloyalty. Even moral judgments are put aside for the perceived welfare of the group. The Ash and Milgram experiments demonstrate how groupthink can develop. The U.S. history provides examples of governmental groupthink. Presidents and their inner circles have committed themselves to a single course of action, even when objective evidence showed the course to be wrong. The leaders became cut off from information that did not coincide with their own opinions. Two space shuttle disasters, the Challenger and Columbia, are also examples of how NASA engineers had a limited view of their options in either launching or landing the shuttle. In each case, the decision resulted in a disaster. So groupthink can be prevented only by ensuring that leaders regularly are exposed to individuals who have views conflicting with those of the inner circle. So specifically, we need to encourage and circulate research results that provide the greatest number of options for decision makers to consider in an atmosphere of free expression and academic freedom.